Um, so the next day I was back to feeling like crap, and so I was gonna go back. I went back to New York though, thinking I was gonna start working from home. I was on the oral steroids now and Asacol, so that was supposed to help. I got back up here, and then Monday, I couldn't get out of bed. I had like no energy. I mean, the only time I get out of bed was to go to the bathroom. It was like the same. I mean, it was the same thing as the previous week, except instead of 20 times, I'm going 10 to 15 to the bathroom, and the stomach pain wasn't as bad, but the pain going to the bathroom was just as bad. Uh, so the symptoms were all there and bad, and I was not functional. They were just slightly improved, but I couldn't. I wasn't gonna get better that way. So after maybe 2.5 days of that, I had to go to the emergency room just to get on the IV. So they put me on IV steroids, took me up to a room, I got admitted, and I was on the IV for about 6 days in the hospital, the IV steroids. Still taking the Asacol and some suppository stuff, and still taking the antibiotics too. And so while that was going on, I was also like on a clear diet, no food for probably the first 4.5 days I was in the hospital. And at this point, I hadn't really eaten the previous 10 days very much at all. I had no appetite whatsoever. So except for that one day when I started the steroids, I kicked in. But I mean, for the most part, I wasn't eating anything. So I was like, I'm still skinny, really skinny, but I lost a lot of weight, and I was just really malnutrition going into the hospital, and then not eating for 5 days just made it way worse. So finally, they got me back on a solid diet when things started to cool off a little bit, and I wasn't going to the bathroom, 15 times a day. I was down on maybe like 6 or 7. But all this time, like, I'm sitting in the hospital bed the whole time, and my legs are starting to like hurt and cramp up, and I'm having trouble walking, kind of, and it just sort of gets worse every day. And I'm on the IV, so getting to the shower is a pain. I can't even really do that. I have no energy. So just like I'm sitting in the bed the whole time, and if I move around, it aggravates, the colon and really messes with me. So I didn't want to do that either. So really, just like sort of miserable, just miserable being in the hospital. I want to get out of there. So when they started putting me back on solid foods, I was like, oh, I want to get out. I want to get out of the hospital. But I was still in the hospital for like 2 days. I was going to get out the next day, but then my potassium was too low, so I needed to stay overnight again and get that back up. It's just a whole bunch of little complications. So finally, I got my potassium up. They let me go. So I went back to my apartment, and I was gonna get back on the pills, the steroids, which I did, and they started to work. I mean, I was like showing a little improvement over like a couple days, periods of time. It was gradual during that week, but I was starting to have these bouts with like underneath my tongue started swelling up, and it like was really like really painful, like a very like immediate pain that like it woke me up from sleep, and like I just like sort of was freaking out a little bit from it because I didn't know how to handle it or what to do with it. And the doctors eventually, when I got to talk to them about it and show them, they didn't really think too much of it or really have an answer for it. So I was just trying to take Benadryl when it would happen, and it happened, I don't know, 6 or 7 days while I was sick. But it was like horrible. Like, it was the worst. I mean, to me, it was the worst thing. If I could eliminate one of the problems I would have had, that would have been it. While I was sick. So that started happening when I came back from the hospital. like in the middle of the night. It would happen usually. Um, so that sucked. But it started the colitis is starting to get a little bit better. Um, but at the same time, my left leg especially started to hurt. I don't know. I felt like I sort of strained it behind my knee when I was walking around, like sort of hobbling around once I got out of the hospital. Because my leg, I mean, my legs were really in bad shape. So walking was like hard, which is ridiculous, but it was true. And so it's felt like I strained it, and so I just was like, all right, it's just a like muscle pull. I'll just try to take it real easy or whatever. And I just kept on, going about my business the next couple of days, but it started to hurt more. And it went down to my calf. It's hurting on my calf too, and so I talked to my dad about it, and he said I should get this ultrasound just to see what's going on. Maybe there's a blood clot. I didn't think so based on the way I was presenting, because it didn't seem typical. But sure enough, when I went in there, that's what it was. I had a blood clot from behind my knee down to the bottom of my calf. And so at that point, when things were just starting to get a little better for the colitis, I had to go back in the hospital for this blood clot now. Which, whatever, and the blood clot wasn't really that bad. It was just a leg pain, but at the same time, in order to fix it, they put me on blood thinners, which was not good for the colitis symptoms, because I was already bleeding in the GI tract, and now this blood's going to be thinner, and obviously it's going to get in more. So that's exactly what happened. And while I was in the hospital, like, the symptoms came back worse, especially the bowel movements and just the blood and the pain, going to the bathroom. So that was another like 5 days in the hospital where that stuff was getting worse instead of better. So it kind of set me back a week, and then also eliminated a week going forward at the same time. So it's sort of like probably set me back 2 weeks just for the stupid blood clot. But they got me on the blood thinners, and after 5 days, they're like, all right, you can go. We'll work the dosage out as we go. And just like, I just been having to do blood work or whatever. So they let me go. And from there, I went back home to Jersey, because my parents came into the city and picked me up, took me home, which was nice, because I had like my mom making me home cooked meals and stuff, and my dad was there to answer all questions, and like my brother and sister were there to hang out, and it's just an easier place to have stuff taken care of, rather than being in New York where I couldn't really do anything myself. Because at this point, like with the leg, I can't even for me to even try to get from my bed to the bathroom was like very difficult. I kind of needed someone's help to do it, because I couldn't I didn't have to put pressure on the leg for it to hurt. As long as if there's blood flowing down to it, it was like really like a strong pain in the calf. So when I was at home, I had these crutches which helped, and I had people to help me out. So that helped a lot. Just being home, having food given to me instead of having to make it, put it together myself or order it or whatever.